Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming on a Saturday morning. This morning we're going to talk about motherhood and parenthood while working in criminal law. So we've got a wide range of people with different experiences. My name's Katie Thorne, I'm one of the criminal silks at Doughty Street. I'm also the founder and chair of WICL. I've got 3 children, so my oldest has just turned 18, and my youngest is 11, so 2 teenage boys and an 11-year-old girl. So I had my oldest, my first one, when I was about 10 years cool. I was in quite a small set of chambers, and and then the second one came very quickly after that, and then about 5 years later, the youngest.
Amy Cox. I'm a solicitor at Son Macmillan Walker and head of litigation there. I've been at Son Macmillan Walker for 12 years now, and I have one child, a 5-year-old daughter. So I'd already been at Son Macmillan Walker 7 years when I had her, and have remained there ever since. I went part-time after maternity leave, but then when my daughter started school in September, I went back to full-time.
Hi, I'm Lisa Wilson from 25 Bedford Row. I've been there just over a year, and I was in Furnivall for 11 years before that. And I have a 3-year-old stepdaughter. We have had her since she was newborn, so interesting chronology. She used to stay with us every other weekend and 1 day a week, but now in lockdown we have her about 4 days a week, so more than 50% of the time. We had her 3rd birthday in the garden last week with all her babies, which I think is the best way to have a birthday party.
Hello, I'm Paveen Hill. I work for a firm called BDB Pitmans, which has created about 15 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, a department to deal with business crime and regulation. So I have 2 children, one 4, my little girl, and a 6-year-old. So I only moved to this firm about 15 months ago, and before that I was at Hodge Jones and Allen, and so I had my children at my previous firm when I was an associate actually, and then I decided when they got a little bit older that I would make the move to a different firm.
Yeah, so I'm Lois Cullen. I'm a solicitor at Hogan Brown Solicitors in Liverpool. I've got 2 kids now. My little boy's nearly 5, and my little girl is 6 months, just turned 6 months. So I'm actually still on maternity at the moment. Yeah, so I'm not due to return back until October. So I've taken the full year off. So I've got a little while left yet before I go back.
My name's Alice Dodd, and I'm a solicitor at a firm in Abingdon in Oxfordshire called Albin & Co. And this is a firm that we joined about 2 years ago. Myself and my former business partner, because we used to run our own firm called Macnab Clark, also in Abingdon. And when I joined Albin & Co, I started work full-time, having worked part-time before. I've got 2 children, one who's 15 and one who is 9.
Hi everybody, I'm Mariam Mir. I'm a barrister at Doughty Street Chambers. I started pupillage at 22 and I met my husband that year and we got married. I then started a 3rd 6 at Garden Court and came to Doughty Street in 2014. And about 3 months later got pregnant with my first one. So Musa was born in 2014, and then I took a 2-year break out completely and did nothing for 2 years but have jollies with my son. And then I decided that I wanted to go and work at Reprieve in their abuses and counter-terrorism team. And I'm lucky enough to be at an amazing chambers that supported me to do that. And I worked at Reprieve for 3 years. And in that time, I had my daughter, who is now 2. And I came back to Doughty Street in November last year, and I practiced in crime and a little bit of extradition.
Morning. So I'm a solicitor at Hodge Jones and Allen Solicitors. I've been practicing criminal law for about 10 years now. My specialism is in youth crime. I beforehand was at a firm called Mackessy's where I trained, and then moved to another wee firm for a little bit, then made the jump to Hodge Jones and Allen. I am currently I have a 9-month-old little girl. I was due back off maternity leave on the 6th of April, but agreed due to circumstances to go on to furlough, given the circumstances currently going on in the world.
And how did that feel, going on furlough suddenly after the end of maternity leave?
It was extremely weird because I feel, and I don't know whether anybody else felt like this, you have to mentally prepare to come back from maternity leave. So I'd gone through the month before sort of not enjoying my last month of maternity leave, but sort of knowing that it was coming to an end. And so mentally preparing for the fact that I had to take this step back and go back into the real world and not be in the mommy bubble. But then on the 1st of April, I was able to go back into the mommy bubble for a little bit longer. But I've also thankfully been able to assist with certain things such as WICL and the Youth Practitioners Association, which I'm the chair of. So it's been an interesting time.
I'm Liana Nethercott-Barnard. I am a senior Crown Prosecutor at CPS London North within the RASO, the Rape and Serious Sexual Offences team. I've been at the CPS for about 3.5 years in various teams. Before RASO, I was in the domestic abuse team, and before that, just the general magistrates court team. Prior to joining the CPS, I was at Sol Macmillan Walker as a paralegal, then a trainee, and then qualified there. I have a nearly 2-year-old daughter, and obviously had her while I was at the CPS. I went back to work after about 14 months of maternity leave, and I went back full time. But at the CPS, you get an opportunity to use something called flexi leave, or flexi leave. So I work 4 days every other week. So I'm able to spend a bit more time with her despite being back full time.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
What obstacles did you face, either when you were first pregnant or during your pregnancy, or when you first had a baby in your life, or even later? What did you find yourself facing in terms of difficulties? Does anyone want to kick off with that?
I'll start.
Yeah.
I remember when I was about 8 months pregnant, I kept falling over on trains, and I was supposed to get on this train to High Wycombe to get to court, and I was just really bumbly, and I just kept falling over. It was a real problem, and I had lots of back pain, and that was difficult. And then when I went on maternity leave, I was incredibly naive and thought that I could still continue to work and that he would just sleep all day. So I took on some civil work, thinking it's just paperwork, right? Like I could just sit and type and he'll be asleep over there. And had a real shock when he didn't want to just sit over there. He wanted to be like constantly fed. And so I tried to do one civil action against the police advice and then stopped for the rest of my maternity afterwards, like not doing any more because it was impossible.
I think for me, when I came back the first time, I think it was just the shock because I was doing a lot of police stations at the time before, and I just sort of worked all sorts of hours, and I was used to sort of working when I wanted. I used to stay late, didn't have to worry about the hours or getting out of the office at a particular hour. And I think for me it was just a bit of a shock having to learn that I had to say no to things, and I had to manage my time in just a different way. And it's probably a more efficient way, but just a different way. And that was, I would say, an obstacle, but I think I've got over that now. And I think you do naturally get over it because you have to, but it's learning how to manage your time differently.
I think real shock. I think that parenthood before you give birth, you need to really, I was so naive going into it. I hadn't really contemplated childcare arrangements. You know, what would happen if your child was sick when they first start nursery and they pick up every bug going, getting excluded from nursery for days on end.
Brilliant. That's
vomited.
Family history.
You know, when the kids start school, I mean, you know, the school used to be now, but my sort of maternal bad mother moment was when, you know, my child vomits purple Calpol because I've shoved him full of Calpol in the morning, and begs the school nurse not to call me because mummy's got an important hearing today.
My stepdaughter.
You have to do the walk of shame into the school office to collect your child who's been waiting hours for you to turn up.
I was just going to say, my stepdaughter seems to save those moments for when it's our weekend with her. So when she's had worms, it's been on our turn. When she's had pink eye, it's been with us. And I just get whatever she gets, basically. I remember having to do a closing speech to a jury with my eye just out here. And then as soon as we send her back to mum, she's well again.
Oh, God.
I think one of the
people who had just been through it, Caroline and Lois.
Yeah.
What sort of strikes you as being the particular?
I think for me, I'm a bit like Marianne. I thought I could continue and I was going to, like, you know, be able to do stuff through maternity leave. And you just can't. You have to. It was the realization that you have to just step back and let it happen, like, and just take all the blows and just go with it, because you just don't know. You can't predict. They're little humans that you just, one minute they're fine and then next minute they're screaming the house down, and you've fed them, changed them, you know, tried to play with them, and they're still not happy, and you're just sitting there, not quite rocking in the corner, but like hoping very, very soon.
I remember on maternity leave, I did my keep in touch day, and I was still breastfeeding, and I remember being in the police station thinking, oh my gosh, I was needed to express, and I did keep in touch day, and my son wasn't very old, and it was interesting.
Oh my God. And Lois, have you had recent experience of difficulties?
Do you know what? I think I was a lot more prepared this time because it's my second. I said to work, I'm taking the whole year. Last time I was like, I'm only taking 3 months off, and then it extended to 6 months, and then it extended to a year at the end, because I just didn't appreciate how I was feeling and how I wouldn't want to go back so soon. So this time around, I think I was more prepared, where I was like, I'm taking a year off, and I'm just going to spend some time with her.
That's great.
So, I was ready for it this time, a bit more.
The thing I found when I was pregnant was the fear of being forgotten.
Yes.
You kind of thought when you were due to go on maternity leave, everyone would just forget who you were, and you wouldn't be kept in the loop of everything. And I don't know, criminal law would change without you, the firm would change without you. But actually, it doesn't. It's fine. You know, I think being the person who rocks up to the office every now and again with a small baby, you know, you're never forgotten by everybody in the firm. But that was certainly a big fear at the time.
Amy, was that before you went on maternity leave, or whilst you were away from the office? Did that fear subside once you were on maternity leave?
No, I don't. I think it was probably there the whole way through, really. I think it's only now in hindsight I can look back and go, I didn't need to feel that way. But I think, before I left, I remember I had my maternity leaving due, and I was just so emotional on that day. I think I was due to do like a little speech, and I basically said thank you and cried, and that was it, and I didn't say anything else other than that, because it was such a big change. And so I think that was a big fear for me at the time.
I think also because a lot of us have we've got quite progressed in our career by the time we've had our first child, so it's what we've been used to, like the constantness, especially as a solicitor, like the constantness of either being at police stations or being at the magistrates court 24/7, and then all of a sudden your mindset has to change, and you're like, oh, okay, this is okay to have this change in your life, and it's fine to sort of let it go. But I do agree with you, Amy, that it's that feeling is horrible. Like you just can't. And I still being on furlough, I still to this day kind of think, please don't forget about me. Sort of thing like that.
Took a different route because she was very much at the beginning of her career, and you were in quite a she hadn't yet got tenancy, so she was still very much being assessed. And so Mariam's position, and it just so happens that we've now got 2 people who did the same thing, having their first child before getting tenancy.
I like to think I set a trend.
You did, Mariam. But and sort of how it works, becoming a very, very young criminal tenant with a brand new baby is really groundbreaking. And so Hayley has gone part-time, hasn't she? And so that's another new first as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it because I hadn't built up those years of practice, when I found it hard not to come back, because my initial feeling was I was going to come back after 9 months, and then I realised that the legal aid cuts had just happened, the cost of childcare, I didn't have a support network around me, and I was still very junior, so I was going to be doing MAGS trials that weren't paying very much, frankly. And I just made the assessment, and I think perhaps it was easier to make it because I hadn't been around for that long, that I think I should just chill out and enjoy this period, and I'll come back when I can afford to. And so that also meant that I kind of thought strategically about the next 5 years. How am I going to make sure that I don't fall off the wagon altogether? And Reprieve was a really great opportunity in the middle of that to get some fantastic experience at an NGO doing international crime work. So, it meant that when I came back, actually, I felt much stronger than when I left.
I think it takes a long time to switch off for maternity leave, first of all. And then when you come back, what about that first day in court when you I don't know thing, but
what you're doing, you can't really speak anymore,
and you're wearing a suit that you haven't worn for such a long time that may not fit you in the same way.
Fit your postnatal body into a prenatal blouse.
Bought a lot of shapewear when I came back.
I have a funny story about that. When I had my first child, I made the move from London to Oxford, and he was probably he was 6 weeks old when we moved, and I was still in that, oh my god, am I going to go back to work in London, or do I have to find a job in Oxford? And so I was flicking through the Law Society Gazette and saw a firm advertising for a solicitor, and I thought, well, I'll give them a ring. I'll see what we do. So I phoned up, and the senior partner, and it wasn't MacNab Clark or everyone that I've been working for, said, oh, why don't you come in this afternoon for an interview? And I said, well, I'm on maternity leave. I've got a 4-month-old baby. And she said, no problem. Come to my house. It's fine. So I trotted up, squeezed myself into a prenatal blouse, turned up there, this most amazing house with this sort of zebra skin rug on the kitchen floor.
Oh god.
My baby immediately, having not had a poo for about the last 12 hours, did an explosive up the back job, and she said, no problem, just change him on the rug down there. And I was like, so I bent down to change, stood up, my blouse burst open. Oh, horrible. Stained old bra. And I just laughed, and she just didn't, just carried on talking as if nothing had happened, and didn't laugh.
Oh, bless.
You get the job.
She did offer me a job, but I couldn't take it.
What about positives, everyone? I'm going to tell you a positive for me, which is a sort of negative positive. But I had my 2 very, very close together. I mean, deliberately. But so my younger son arrived 17 months after my older one, and so I had 2 in nappies, and my older one wasn't the easiest either. So each pregnancy I had 6 months off, and about 4.5 months my partner basically said to me, "You are really missing work, aren't you?" And I went, "I really, really am. This is not fun. This is not fun." So bless him, my second one was a really easy, laid back baby. So we just sort of said to the childminder who we had for the first one, you know, is it okay if we give him to you at 5 months? She went, "I'd love it. Bring him over." So I went back to work early because I really wanted to be me again. And I found that absolutely lovely, and found that the childminder was miles better at the baby stuff. I wasn't that good at baby stuff. I'm much better at this age. But yeah, I was so pleased to have a career to go back to, and, you know, felt like I was using my brain again and just being a normal person again. So although it's lovely in a way, 2 toddlers, hard work. I don't want to put anyone off. It's all doable, but yeah.
There's a small gap between mine as well. Well, a small, about 20 months between mine, and so yeah, we had the same thing, nappies at the same time, and it was difficult.
But who was it who was saying? Was it Caroline who was saying that, you know, you're naive, you're not thinking about these things before you start? But I sort of think it's good to not be thinking about it. If you ever really thought it through, you wouldn't do it. And it's, you know, it's just, you throw yourself in and, you know, you just make it work somehow or other. And it, you know, we're all still here. So that's... I
remember before we were thinking about having a child, we were buying a house, and we bought a house. And I remember thinking to myself, right, I need to figure out whether the mortgage we're going to take on would work if I was on maternity leave. And the maths didn't work. I was like, I don't know how this makes sense. These maths do not work. The sums don't add up. So we obviously just went, we'll just buy the house and go for it and see what happens. And it just works. I don't know how, but when you look at the maths beforehand, you think, how is that going to happen? And then life just changes. I suppose you're spending on different things. You're maybe not going out as much or anything. And somehow it just works.
There isn't a right time to have children. That's what I realised. I always thought there'd be set times, you know, in your life, but there just isn't a right time. You're never going to be at the right, in your career anyway. I don't think it has to fit in with your career. It's never going to be the right time for you to have a child, I don't think. But I think good childcare
is really, really important, isn't it?
Yeah. And what does that mean for you?
For me,
I mean, not now, because obviously your kids are older, but back in those days.
Really good nursery, who I think I've been to 2 different nurseries, but the first nursery both my kids went to and had the same carers in the early days, and they were very good with first-time mums, reassuring, settling them in, taking those phone calls in the middle of the day. Are they okay? They were a bit upset when I left this morning. Have they settled down? You know, and I just think that made it so easy. And I'm still in touch with some of the carers now, and my eldest son particularly, he's still friends with his little friends that he made when he was 7, 8 years old, and he's 15 now, and they're all taller than me with big gruff voices, and it's lovely.
That's great.
We're just looking at nurseries now for when things get back to normal. And so what we've actually done, we went round and had a look at several of them, but we also joined NCT and basically all decided to go to one. So if one of us has any difficulties at work, then another one can pick up or collect and things like that. And we're really hopeful that that works out in reality. But you just never know, do you? You kind of go around and they tell you all these positives, and you just hope that they are really positive and nice, and they give big cuddles all the time.
Is there waiting lists with you for nurseries? Because where I live, there's like huge waiting lists.
Yeah.
We had to put our name down before she was even born.
Yeah, I live in northeast London, and it was the same there. Yeah. I mean, I think building a village of support around yourself is crucial. So if one thing fails, you've got another backup. And when I was making the nursery decisions, I actually put Musa in nursery first, and he used to come home and be like, Musa, no, like it, nursery. And I was like, right, okay, it's not working, and he wasn't settling. And so I moved him to a childminder, and he was much happier there. I think a smaller environment just worked, and it's kind of looking at all your options. And I use this website, childcare.co.uk, and booked viewings with like, I think 20 different types of settings, and just went to see one after the other and realised what I did like and didn't like. Just going through that process, and eventually I found a local childminder who was really lovely, and both my children have gone to her, and she's become like kind of a member of the family. So when he progressed to nursery, I felt like he was ready to go, and I had the benefit of an advice of a mum who was very experienced and had been through it all, and when I was having a panic, she was really reassuring.
I had childminders all the way through. There's pros and cons for everything, isn't there? But one thing that I think prospective mums might be worried about is, you know, how do you make that work financially? How do you make it work? I mean, our experience is that it is really, really expensive. But as Amy says, you don't realise before it happens that you are going to change. You're not going to be spending lots of money on going to restaurants and clubs and bars, because you're actually spending money differently. So even though it's very, very hard, you know, I think you can make it work. I mean, when I was first a mother, I was earning really, really rubbish money, you know, as a junior barrister in a small chambers, really rubbish money. And you had no maternity leave. I mean, maternity pay, I mean, because obviously I was self-employed, and there wasn't even a maternity benefit back in the olden days. So you got 10 weeks at £100 or something, wasn't going to pay for anything or support you in any way. So, but somehow or other, we muddled through, and, you know, you just do, I think.
And it's amazing what you can do for free. The library for us is our favourite place. It's where we take her all the time. She's got the corner where she goes, reads her books, and she gets all that enjoyment. We pay nothing for it. And stones in the garden is our newest discovery. If you haven't learned how much joy stones can bring yet, you definitely should do it. Get some paint, teach them that mess is fun, and it's just hours of endless entertainment.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, yeah. And the children's centres are brilliant as well. Like, the children's centres have such good classes, free classes available, the baby yoga and messy play, and they're just great. I think people that don't realise children's centres are there. Such a
I used the children's centre a lot. They were great. I used so much. I couldn't believe how much they offered to me for free.
Yeah.
No, great.
Also, the other things, like sort of you personally as well, like I used to go to, used to call it boob club, but it was to help with breastfeeding basically, and but we all, some of us didn't breastfeed, and we all kind of went, and it was our social thing, and they offered tea and cake and coffee, and you got to speak with other moms, and that really, through those initial weeks where you just felt, what am I doing every day, it really helped to get out of the house, and B, have someone that you could talk to, alternatively to family and friends.
I think, Caroline, you're right. Like, particularly in London, if you don't have family close by and you don't have that support network, those places are really important for building like a new support network when, you know, your friends might not have had children at the same time. And, you know, I hope I've met lifelong friends at those types of places.
I think you do.
That's true. I think you go through a life journey, don't you, with life experience, so to speak.
And then going to school is another moment where you meet loads and loads of parents then, and, you know, they become really close friends.
Or you don't, because you don't go to school very often, because you're not at the gates, and you don't do pick up and drop off. And when you do go on that one day, you feel like you don't really know who anyone is.
Oh, yeah.
But personally, I go, actually, I've still got so many friends from when she was at nursery.
And you don't.
I don't need everybody. As long as she's happy at school, that's all that matters. But to begin with, that was a big thing for me. I hated the fact I wasn't at the school gate. And I think I've had to learn to realise, actually, you know, as long as she's happy at school and I have friends, I didn't need to make a load of new friends at the school.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Don't you find that you bond with the parents who run in at the last minute of our
You bond with the other ones who aren't at the school gate over WhatsApp.
as you're galloping across
Yeah.
the playground to get there before it shuts.
And the
That's
one
that's
who've
what I've done.
got toothpaste all down their suit and all that stuff. Yeah, definitely.
That's one thing that I'm dreading as a stepmom, is that once our little girl starts school, I'm obviously going to be completely excluded from that. I don't know if I'll be able to go to any of the school assemblies or anything. And so I feel like she's mine when we have her, but I know that there's going to be a time where actually I have to be very excluded probably. So hopefully.
Why though? I mean, most schools aren't, don't ask. So
I know we'll see though. That's going to be the tough bit, is obviously mum has the final say and I've got to respect her wishes, and of course I will.
Yeah.
But it's just one thing that I'm trying to prepare myself for mentally. Yeah.
I think, I mean, I'm not with my children's father anymore.
Okay.
And I think that you can get put on the email lists so that you get notifications of assemblies and plays and things like that. And, we go to school plays together. He doesn't really come to parents' meetings and evenings and stuff like that because he lives and works in London. But, any special event at the school, he comes with his partner. And, it was a long time ago now, but we all go together, so they have two sets of parents turning up at things.
Yeah. Well, it's not that weird anymore. There's all sorts of different families, and that's what they teach the kids as well. So what about how the experience of being a parent has affected your career progression? Would you say it has? Can you quantify it in some way, or do you think it's been positive in some way? I mean, I when I went back, I felt like everyone started teaching me as a grown-up, where before I'd been the sort of baby in chambers, and then I was a mother, and so was seen by my solicitors as well as by my clerks and other colleagues in chambers. I was seen as more grown up, and I really noticed my work going up a level for at least both the first two. Coming back sort of seemed to give me a bit of gravitas somehow or other. But how about everyone else? Do you feel it's been, has everyone gone back full-time or part-time? What's everyone done?
I would agree with that, Katie, because I was quite junior when I left with Musa, and when I came back after my second daughter, 5 years had passed because I'd done 3 years at Reprieve, and I felt older and more mature. But I certainly felt that I was treated that way, and certainly the type of work that I'm doing now is very different to the work I was doing when I originally left. And I think the things that I demand as well, and the things that I demand of myself, I've kind of cranked up a notch of where I want to be, and so I'm pursuing it more doggedly and not just accepting everything. I think it brings a level of confidence. Just having had kids, I feel like I'm a legit adult now. Like I can ask for things. I definitely came back with massive imposter syndrome and felt like I didn't really belong. But quite soon after, I realised that if I'm doing this and I'm spending this time away from the kids and I'm spending that money on childcare, it has to be worth it. And so I became quite sort of like, this is what I'm going to do. And I kind of was quite dogged about achieving things. And so I feel like that has definitely had an impact. I'm a proper adult now.
How about you, Lois? Because you've just gone off again, but you've had a child for 5 years now, haven't you? How's that been for you?
Yeah, fine. I mean, I don't
My
think
child just entered the room.
it put me back progression-wise or anything. Yeah. I mean, it's just what you make it, I suppose, isn't it? If you're determined to progress, it shouldn't stand in way in any way. And I don't think it did. I think my career progressed just the same as it was before. I think it's what you make it, really, isn't it? If you want to make sure that you'll progress, you just got to make it work.
Yeah. And it's nice if there's a few of you within a firm who are going through a similar experience, because what I found when I went off, actually a few of us went off at the same time and then all came back, and there's sort of strength in numbers as well, if I'm honest. You know, one person had said, right, I'm going to rewrite my contract and I'm going to change my hours and I'm going to work like this and I'm going to be paid the same. And we all sort of thought, yeah, you know, that's the way it should be done. And when you approach it like that, there's strength in numbers, and I think everyone, the firm sort of said, okay, they had to say yes, because we were doing the same amount of work, so but just in a different way. So they had to do it. So we had a bit more confidence because we had each other.
Yeah.
That's lovely. I mean, I think I did a mixture of the two. When I was working in London, it was quite a male-dominated firm, and one of the partners actually said to me, you know, I don't think you can work part-time and be a criminal solicitor. Anyway, during my maternity leave, I moved to Oxford because I had reassessed everything, and I kind of thought, what's the point in being in London away from my family? And what I really wanted to do is to be able to pop in to my mum's for a cup of tea after work.
Yeah.
You know, so I moved to Oxfordshire, and I made the decision that, you know, I was going to, I was 35 when I had my first child, so I really wanted to enjoy it, and so I thought, you know, move to Oxfordshire, be nearer your sort of support network and family, and I was really fortunate that I moved to McNab Clark, and my, you know, future business partner was in the same position as me. She had a child a year older than mine, so she had just gone through it all and was really flexible. Yeah. We both would leave at 4 o'clock every day, you know, get in at sort of 9, or just go straight to court, and it was a really, really lovely experience having that support.
I imagine, Liana, the CPS is just amazing to be working in when you're a mother. But tell us a bit about your experience of it. Do you think there's been negatives in terms of career progression or not?
I don't think so. I think a few people have alluded to it, but the negatives have probably been my own insecurities. So I started with a cohort of people. I was one of 6, I think, and I got pregnant and went on maternity leave, and my own insecurities were that everyone would have progressed into bigger and better roles. I'd go back and I'd have lost a year. But that's just not how it happens. People have other things going on. And when I got back, I knew what I wanted to do, and a few other people have said it. You get back and you realise, okay, I've only got however many hours in a day, and I'm going to do the best work that I can do during those hours. And as you just said, the CPS are fantastic. My manager, as soon as I got back, she sort of said, no pressure at all, but is there anything you want to do? Have you got any career aspirations? And I wanted to work in the RASO team, and within 4 months, she got me there. She was like, okay, we can do this. So they've been so supportive, and actually, I would say that it hasn't impacted my career progression. If anything, it's improved it, because you're more motivated. And I would say that it's okay to still want to do your job and want to do it well. So many people said to me, oh, once you have a baby, you won't care, like you'll have other priorities. But for me, work is like still really important, and progressing is really important, because we've all worked so hard and for so long to get where we are. It's okay to still love your work and want to do well.
Definitely. It's really nice to give yourself permission to still be work focused and ambitious. You can do both, I think. What about the other barristers? I mean, one of the things of being a criminal barrister is often your work is quite last minute and it's at night. And how's that worked for you?
I'm exhausted. So I find that I've just got to sleep when I can. When it's my weekend, not with her, I just really make sure I lie in, I catch up on sleep, so that then I actually can function at court. That for me is the most important thing. Another thing I found though is that I don't want to work off circuit anymore, and I've told my clerks I don't want to take big cases away from London, because my time with her is such a premium, And they've been great about that, as were my last set, in fact, when I said to them, I think this is the way I need to make a change. So I think just speaking very openly to your clerks, if you have them, telling them what your priorities are, and actually being unapologetic about it as well. Don't feel guilty for saying, I'm going to change my way of doing things.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
I'm quite strict about bedtimes.
Yeah.
7 o'clock, 7:30, that's it, lights out. And it means that I get actually 3 hours in the evening to just catch up on stuff that I haven't been able to do during the day, especially during lockdown. It's very difficult to work with both. There are 5 and 2, and they don't care if I've got other priorities. So I'm really strict about bedtime at the moment. 7:30, they're asleep.
Do you not get any downtime then at all for yourself? Because it sounds like if you're having to working with the kids, with the kids, and then having the evening where you're working, it must be full on all the time.
Yeah, and it's Ramadan too, so I've been fasting for the most of it. So that's been really intense, actually. But yeah, I think you just realise that your capacity is just so much more than you think it is before you have kids. Like my capacity, I thought I was stressed as a pupil. Just the capacity just seems to keep growing, and there are times where I say, actually, that's enough. And yesterday, one of my favourite clerks called me and said, "Oh, there's this great new case," and I was like, I actually can't. I really feel sad to say no, but I'm going to say no, and because during this period especially. I have to factor in time to just be kind to myself. So yesterday I took a whole day off and didn't do any work. I just played with the kids and had a really nice iftar where I just kind of made really nice food and just really relaxed, because I think part of being really organized about your time and maximizing your time is also recognizing when you've had enough and taking time for yourself and not feeling guilty about that, because I know I'm a better mum and better at my job when I've had enough time for myself too. So at the moment it's really intense, but I know that this period's not going to last forever, and so I quite like, actually, I really enjoy that quiet time sat in my laptop just ruminating about what it's not, I find it fun actually working, so it's more, I find it much harder being a mum than I do being a barrister in many ways.
What was I going to say? Whose little one can we hear?
It's mine. She wants to say hello. Hi.
Hello. So what was I going to say? The experience that Mariam was just talking about and Lisa was just talking about, it really resonates with me. Obviously mine are a lot older now. But yeah, bedtime and then getting a nice period of time that you can really focus and concentrate really suited me. And it's also important that when as a barrister, your working life is different. You can finish in court at 4:30 and go home. So although as a solicitor you need to be present in the office because you're an employee, you have a bit of freedom as a barrister. So at 4:30 I could go and pick up the kids, so I would be there by 6 o'clock at the latest, and then I would turn my phone off. I mean, in those days it wasn't such an issue, but turn my phone off, not look at emails, not look at anything. Just give them, a couple of hours, because they need you then. They've had a long day with childcare or nursery or whatever, and have a couple of hours with them and then go back to work. And I found that really helpful for my head and also to just compartmentalize my life. Nowadays, they go to bed after me. It's a totally different, so you have a period when, I don't know, they're about 8 to 11 when they will still do what they were told, but they're up a lot later. So that period of 7 to 10 or whatever it was is being squeezed, and that is pretty tiring, because you're still having to do the same amount of work, but you're having to start it later. But nowadays, they don't need me much, except when there's a great big drama. They don't need me much, and so I can start my work, but it's just I don't get the focus time because there's a million people in the house who are all coming in and grazing in the fridge all night and all that stuff. So it's different, but it's still doable.
Yeah, I think with being a solicitor, the same as Paveen said about changing your times and when you leave the office, and things like that. I think you have to, as a mum, realise that everyone's going to see you get up and go at the end of your day, because perhaps you're doing pickup and things like that, and you worry that the perception they're going to have is that, you know, they quite quickly down tools and leave. And you have to realise, actually, as long as the people who need to know what work you do, and if you do work later and things like that, that's fine. But it's different. It's different being used to the fact you're not present in the office later at night like possibly other people are.
I was really worried about that when I moved to my new firm, because I've been at an old firm for a very long time. When I moved to my new firm, I was worried. It was a very different firm, and I was worried that might be perceived as me, you know, being lazy, or, you know, because you want to make a good impression. But actually, they've been fantastic. They've been brilliant about that. So no one, it seems to be quite common now as well. In fact, it's sort of supported. Seems to be that everyone's sort of supported to work from home or be. I was going to say,
things have changed, haven't they? With especially with working, and now everybody is set up to work from home. I do wonder how different it is going to be. Like you work from home, and it's just accepted now, whereas before you kind of had a barrier to explain why you're working home and how it's effective.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that's one of the positives that's come out of lockdown. Let's finish off by 3 tips, everyone, for someone who is thinking about having children or already started the process, shall we say. I'll start off just because, you know, I've sort of given these tips to people. My first tip, and it's probably too late now, is choose your partner well. And if you haven't chosen your partner well, do some very intensive training, because it's extraordinary how many families, both the man and the woman, revert back to sort of 1950s traditional roles. And that doesn't work. If you want to keep your career and have you know, a really decent life, you need to make sure that they are also doing the house and doing the housework and thinking about what the kids' puree is going to be next week, or whatever it is you're doing. It's not okay to have someone who is just thinking that this is your role. So that's my tip number 1. Now, my tip number 2 is a bit linked. So it's don't try and be perfect. So don't think that because you're a brilliant criminal solicitor or a brilliant criminal barrister, you also have to be the perfect parent, because it's rubbish. You're never going to be. If you spend all your time sort of, you know, hovering over them, that's not good for them either. A little bit of benign neglect is great for kids. So don't try and be perfect, because you'll actually wind everyone in the house up, including yourself, and end up, you know, it'll just be too stressful. So just be as good as you can be, and I'm sure that'll be great. And then my third tip is, whatever it is, whether it's a new case or a new role or a new job, say yes and then work out how you're going to do it. That's it. How about everyone else?
Can I go next? Then I'll mute myself. Build a support network around yourself is tip number 1. Have people who support you and care about you, even if it's remotely or however it needs to be. But in terms of your childcare, have help, because you need it. Secondly, let go of the mum guilt. You can't do everything all of the time, and you don't need to, and you don't have to, and everything will be okay.
Yeah, good one.
And the third one is be kind to yourself throughout the journey, and don't underestimate yourself.
Lovely.
Planning. I didn't have any advice on how it was actually going to work in practice when I first had children. So things to think about: are you going to work full-time, part-time? Your childcare is really important, and I think speak to your partner as well. It's touching on what Katie has said. So, you know, are you all going to work full-time? Are you both going to work part-time to save on childcare costs, to share the burden, really? Yes, and your support network in terms of starting nursery, school pickups. What happens if the child is ill? I know that I've got together with a couple of friends and we've put each other down as emergency networks, and sometimes we share picking up after school and things like that.
Great.
So,
what about you, Caroline?
So the three ones that I would say would learn to accept that you can't always be in control of things, that it just doesn't happen. You have plans. Back on saying like what you were saying, Katie, about having a good partner and things like that. I've been very lucky, and I should have mentioned this earlier, that I was, as you know, going back at 6 months, and then my husband was taking shared parental leave, so we were properly going half and half on it, and we got a lot of negativity about that at first, because it was, you know, going back to the 1950s view of the women should be looking after the child, and but we also got very positive views about it. And then with being on furlough, it's been quite nice because we've actually been able to share it together. So just never underestimate control and just go with the flow. The second point, and I apologise because I wrote them down, trust yourself, because it is a very scary and daunting experience. But you are the person that knows what's happening, how to go with it. And that little sort of sixth sense that you have, just trust it, and always sort of believe in yourself when you do it, because I think we do get very sort of stuck in our ways and thinking, no, someone said this. And that leads on to my third point, is that everyone will give you advice. You can read it, you can hear it, you can listen to it in different forms these days, but take it all in, listen to it, but go with what you think's best, and don't beat yourself up about it.
Great tips. And some of that advice will be conflicting, so yeah, you have to choose, don't you? You have to choose. How about you, Liana?
So the first one I would say for anyone planning to have a baby is there's never a good time. You're never going to have enough money. You're never going to have the best job. There's always going to be opportunities, and there's never going to be the perfect time. So just go with it, I would say. That would be my first one. My second one would be more of a practical one. Get yourself a pacifier, honestly. It's my opinion, but for me, it has been a lifesaver, particularly when I want to do a bit of work. Just shove that dummy in, and it's been amazing. The third one would probably be just to remind yourself that nothing's permanent. When you're in it, it might feel like something's lasting forever. Your child's not sleeping, the child's crying a lot, but it doesn't last forever. Those moments don't last, and it's okay if you're finding it hard. Like, everyone finds it hard, and not enough people talk about how hard it is. So yeah, those would be my three.
So I echo pretty much what everyone else has said. One tip that I would give is use parental leave if you're entitled to it, because if you're an employee, you're entitled to 18 weeks per year. 18 weeks until the child's 18 per child, up to 4 weeks a year unpaid leave. And I found that really helpful. Because obviously you can take your normal holidays as well, but then you're entitled to this unpaid leave just to spend time with the kids. That's what it's for. And that's been really helpful. So I've taken a few weeks every year that Jules has been born just to take some time out with him and have a little holiday with him, which has been a really good tip. And I just echo what everyone else has said, really. Nothing's permanent, is it? So I think after I first had Jules, my first, it was just so daunting. I think we were moving house at the time, and my car finance had just expired, so my car had gone back. So I went from having a job, a car, a house, and then everything changed overnight. I had no car, no job, no house, and it was like, what's my life become? Just like night feeds. But then obviously nothing's permanent, and you do get back to normal, and it's all great once you get into your stride. So those would be my tips, I think. As
a stepmom, what I found hardest was self-imposed judgment. I felt like if I talked about being a stepmom, people would judge me for it, particularly when it came out how young she was when she was in my life. So I would say to any stepmoms out there, just get rid of that judgment. No one cares. As you've already alluded to, Katie, there's no normal family anymore. Everything is different compared to many years ago. And if you love the child that's in your life, then you love him or her. It doesn't matter what title exists. Secondly, and again, I think particularly as a stepmother, be unapologetic about having to divide your time, because at first I felt like because time was such a premium with her, when it was our weekend on, I just had to completely give myself to her and do whatever she wanted and not also be a barrister. And I've realised that you just can't live your life that way. And so if it's time for me to do work, I just have to say to her, I'm going to do my work now. And actually, she loves it. She loves the idea of having a job, and she now puts on her little bag and she knows what a wig is. So don't feel guilty about it at all.
Yeah, and she's proud of you for it.
Absolutely, yeah. And she helps me with my suitcase if I'm out with her and it's a work day. So don't feel guilty about it. And the same is true the other way. Chambers socials, if it happens to fall on an evening that is my evening with her, I don't feel guilty anymore about leaving. If I don't want to be at that social because I'd rather be with my stepdaughter, then I go now. But I really have struggled with those things the most. And then my final tip, and this is to all parents, step or biological, is show pictures to the court staff. They love babies. They will definitely feed it back to the judges, and you will find that judges are so much kinder to you.
Oh, very good. I never did that. I must do that more. I'll have to get some fake babies on my
A picture of a hairy teenager.
I'd say a couple of the tips I'd give would be to be kind to yourself as well, and give yourself those treats, even if it's buying yourself a nice lunch, or having a nice coffee, listening to a podcast on your way to work, or just a little treats that make it a nice day that you don't get to do when you're either at home or when you're working. Because I think the lockdown has taught me this, actually. I really miss sort of listening, my journey into work, listening to a podcast or watching, I don't know, some rubbish series or something, you know. And I think the other one would be to not be afraid to tell your employer if you think you need things to change, because I think we want to be perfect, but I think we shouldn't be afraid to say to our employers, no, we need it done in a different way to make it work for us. So it's, again, being unapologetic. I agree with that. So that's it for me.
My first one, I was thinking, don't worry. I think I've realised everything I've said has been, I worried about money. I worried about being forgotten. I worried about people going, she leaves at 4:30 and she's not working, you know, over and above. I think don't worry. Actually, all of those things are fine. So don't worry. Secondly, be happy with where you are at. I remember spending a day out with a couple of my friends recently where one of them's a full-time stay-at-home mum. I'm obviously working full-time. Another one was working part-time. We all thought we were doing it wrong, and that other people were maybe questioning us and things like that. But actually just do what works for you, because we're all doing it right. We're all doing what's right for us. And my last one is what Lisa said about don't feel guilty. I recently, because of lockdown, I'm working so hard, and you know, I remember spending a day saying to my husband, I just feel like I'm not spending time with her, I'm not doing schooling with her and things like that. And he reminded me that actually she is seeing something good of me working, because she's learning, you know, women work as well, mothers work as well, and it's a good work ethic. So whatever you're doing, they're learning from you in a good way.
Yeah, definitely. That's a fantastic role model that you're showing her. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's true. It's
Very true.
And I've noticed it as my children get older as well. The work ethic, just through seeing you work, and you know, I've been watching my eldest do a school project this week, and I've just felt, you know, just overwhelmed by how hard he's worked at it and stuck at it. And I think it's through seeing all of us working. And I think the other thing I just want to say to Lisa as well about step parenting, I think there's so many positives to come out of it. And I know that my boys have, you know, they're really close to their stepmom, and they get a lot of positives from her, and a sort of a balanced view on life. And I think if you ask them, they would say that they'd see it as a positive, and they're really close to my partner as well. And they think they've got two sets of parents effectively.
Thank you.
Really lovely.
Well, guys, thank you so much for all your words of wisdom. Really, really helpful. And on Tuesday, we have got a live session, a sort of surgery. So hopefully we'll see many of your faces. The idea is that we'll be the panel that people will be asking questions from and sort of picking up on things that we've said. So
thank you all for coming. It's been really interesting to listen to all of your stories, and actually I've learned a lot, and I've got some tips as well from all of you about what I need to do and how we can get on and progress in our careers. I think it's probably the best way to see it. So hopefully we can all stay in touch after this and keep in touch and keep on sharing our experiences.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone.
Just got to say, whilst we were doing this, the ice cream van has arrived in my room, so I'm doing it.
Oh my God.
Bye.